Corners. They can be horrible things. You have to slow down but not too much, you have to turn in but not too little, and then you have to accelerate out but not too soon. However, as much as some corners can really drive you around the bend, time is gained and lost primarily through those corners. The best drivers can lose the least amount of speed and be on the power before anybody else. That's all wonderful, but how do ordinary sim racers like you or I stand a chance against these drivers? Well, let's dive into mastering the art of cornering. A corner consists of three distinct parts: the entry, the apex, and the exit. Each of these provides you with about 1,000 different ways of messing up and losing time to your competitors. So let's take a look at all three, one at a time. First up, corner entry. On the approach to a corner, you will need to take into consideration the speed that you want to take the apex at. This will dictate not only where you brake, but for how long and the braking technique you'll need to use as well. For example, if you were approaching a tight chicane like turn 1 at MOZA, you would look to brake hard and bleed off brake pressure using trail braking. However, if you were going into a fast sweeping corner, the braking would be far less heavy, still requiring some trail braking just to ensure the car stays pointing in the correct direction, but nothing like the approach you would use for the tight chicane. Also a consideration when approaching the corner is the line and subsequent steering angle you wish to use. Fernando Alonso in the recent Brazilian Grand Prix terrifically demonstrated how different approaches to a corner can be advantageous. When it comes to what line to use, you would typically be told a wide entry, shallow apex, and a wide exit is the correct line. This is because it widens the corner, using as much track as possible, enabling you to carry more speed through the apex. This is commonly referred to as the racing school line. However, you also have the wide entry to shallow exit and the shallow entry to wide exit. When approaching a corner, you must already be prepared for which approach you'd like to use. The racing school line isn't always the right approach though. A wide entry to shallow exit means you brake at a different point and accelerate at a different point too. Let's take Spa-Francorchamps Turn 1's La Source as a perfect example of where this might be useful. The biggest advantage of using this approach is that you are on the power earlier, which provides a better run down the subsequent straight. Because Turn 1 at Spa leads onto a straight, then Eau Rouge and Radial, which is flat in F1, and then to another long flat out section, a good exit from La Source is vital to be competitive down the straight. A shallow entry and wide exit is a fairly uncommon approach for ordinary racing as it compromises corner exit too much, but it does have its place because it is an ideal line to use when overtaking someone. More specifically, if you want to dive bomb someone into Narnia, this is the optimal line. When talking about racing lines and braking techniques, we could get ourselves into a rabbit hole discussing all the different approaches required for different types of cars. For example, front wheel drive cars understeer, so you'll need to lighten the load on the front tyres by minimising time turning. Then rear wheel drive cars like oversteering. If the rear is too loaded, the car will jolt into a spin and you will lose control. You can manipulate the car with different lines, throttle usage and brake techniques to minimise the chance of losing control. So on the approach, you customise your braking and line to suit the car and corner in question. Now let's move on to the apex phase. On the surface, the apex is where it all happens. It's the middle of the corner, so it is the corner. But it's also arguably where the least input is involved. You see, you've already done the work preparing for the corner and the tricky managing the exit throttle is still to come. But there's still important things to understand. During the apex phase, there are three things you need to be concerned about: your steering, throttle, and brake. Seems obvious, but let's start with steering. One thing in particular that you need to pay close attention to is the curb type. Is it a nice flat rumble strip or is it a raised curb? Is the gravel or grass on the inside of that curb? At this point in the corner, you've already committed to the line you must take. You should be hitting the apex, but how you hit the apex will vary from corner to corner and track to track. Some tracks have raised curbs and unsettle the car when you drive over them. This will scrub off speed, unsettle the car, wear down the tyres and prevent you from getting back on the throttle early. If it's a flat curb, is the grass or gravel on the inside? If there's more tarmac, then you can move the car over until the outside wheels touch the inside line, taking as tight a line as possible. Again, this isn't always the case. Take the sharp hairpin at the end of the straight at the Nürburgring Grand Prix track. Because of the steep elevation on the apex, it has the same effect as a raised curb and unsettles the car. Therefore, a wider line, avoiding the apex altogether, allows the car to remain settled and you can get on the throttle earlier. Now the accelerator. This is a widely generalised statement, but you want to be on the throttle at the apex to power out. Some corners this won't be possible, and some you'll even be on the throttle before the apex, but usually at the tightest point of the corner you want to begin accelerating. Finally, the braking. You should be completely off the brake pedal by the time of reaching the apex. Some you'll need to trail brake right to the middle of the corner like MOZA turn 1, and others you won't, but as a rule, by the time you reach the apex the brake should not be pressed. Now the exit phase. You've nailed the approach, you've nailed the apex, now let's get away from the corner. Looking at professional data, you'll notice that when they get on the throttle, it's almost immediately to 100%. Again, this is a generalisation as some corners stop that being possible, but one of the most common mistakes is going partially on the throttle too soon. This lifts the nose of the car and prevents the front wheels being loaded enough to provide maximum grip, and subsequently stops you getting back to full power quickly. With steering, smoothness is key. Let the car automatically run as wide as it needs to. If you've nailed the first two sections, the car should run right to the exit curb smoothly. So there's vital learnings from each section of the corner, and really you can only learn them with practice and track time. Oh, and Track Titan of course, as it will show you everything I've just spoken about visually right in front of you. As I've mentioned, these are generalised tips that you will need to adapt and customise to each individual car. In Formula cars, you can rely on downforce to limit oversteer or understeer to your liking. GT cars will be slightly less as they have less aero, and front-wheel drive touring cars can rely upon that to regain control during oversteer. It's all about finding the best approach for you, but that all boils down to smoothness, braking, smoothness, line, smoothness, acceleration, and smoothness. Good luck. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to hit the like button if you enjoyed it, and why not join our ever-growing community of Track Titan users on TikTok, Instagram, Discord and more. So until next time, have fun and as always, race with respect.